All right, Chris, welcome back onto the show. It's great to have you join us. Let's kick off by starting talking about where you are in the world and what you're doing. You're out in South Africa right now with the Pho3nix Foundation.
Yeah, I came over, believe it or not, to do this double century ride I do with Breitling every year. Last year was an adventure because we got stuck here with the Omicron. Remember that whole period of time in life where we all had
That's
COVID?
right. The last time we
Yeah,
talked, you
yeah,
just escaped, hadn't you,
just escaped.
by a
So
second on a private jet to get out of
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. So we came back, and that was last week in Swellendam, and then we sort of planned to run one of these Phoenix. We do these Phoenix projects around the world, and the one I really enjoy is this Phoenix Futures program, which is we do 4 of them a year, one in Europe, one in Australasia, one in Asia, and one in Africa now. We'll do one in South America next year. We take the 20 best or 20 high performing athletes from a region, and we bring them and we just mentor them on what it takes to become an elite, from transition up from junior to elite. So this is the first one we've ever done in Africa. So we've got 23 kids, 11 from South Africa, and then two from Kenya, 2 from Ethiopia, 1 from Zambia, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And yeah, it's teach them about social media and drug testing, and it's really cool. I find it the most fulfilling program we did. We did one in Thailand a few weeks ago for our Asian athletes, and it's really cool. Usain Bolt rings in, and Kelly Slater, and yeah, it's across all sports, not just triathlon.
So what's the big drive of this? And is it a purely philanthropic type of deal where it's just trying to help out the kids from backgrounds who don't have necessarily the governing body support that they might have in Australia, America, UK, something like that?
Yeah, the Pho3nix Foundation was started by a gentleman called Sebastian Kulchik, a close friend of ours, and he wanted to create a foundation and do something solid. He inherited a large sum of money when his father died prematurely, and he was sort of, not lost is the wrong word, but he wanted to do something good, and his best memories for himself were through sport with his father. And he's like, look, just looking at all the statistics, it was quite alarming, the amount of kids that are dropping out of sport and the participation levels amongst kids are dropping out, and a lot of the literature was saying that we're closing a lot of kids from out of sport because of costs. And so he's like, look, I want to form a foundation that gives opportunities for kids to participate in sport and do sport and understand sport, because sport is more than just a game. It's, as I learned in my life, I met my wife through sport, my friends, my peer group. It is an integral part of, I think, of living, So
Yeah.
he started it, and he's become really bullish. He loves it. He leads it. And, we do everything from creating events for kids all over the world to this Futures program. We support both kids and athletes to the Olympics from underprivileged nations. We sent 80 athletes to the Tokyo Olympics that don't have the funding from their nation to go, and we set them up with training programs, or training places around the world pay for their training, just to give them those opportunities. Because what we found, and we had one athlete from Mozambique that we supported, she was the first female to ever represent her country, ever represent her region there, and it had like 2-3 million kids that followed, that were intrigued in her story. And I think, what an amazing role model! And she would never have got to the Olympics, and never had the opportunity to go to the Olympics without the Pho3nix Foundation. And these are it's just small steps, and there's amazing foundations around the world, but we do pretty cool stuff. I find it liberating. I really found my purpose. I love it. I love it. It's truly cool.
That's really amazing, because it runs in parallel with what you already do. But I think a lot of the pros I've spoken to who have retired from sport at the very highest level, a real common thread is like the what next? What do I do? What do I do next? You spent your whole life up to, in your case, you were probably early 40s, right, when you finally decided you weren't going to compete anymore. You've got another 40 years to fill in your life, and you've been this highest possible achiever in your field. Where'd you go after this? So it's amazing you've got something that really feels like it's giving back to people, whereas it's something different than starting a podcast or starting coaching or doing TV and commentating work, something like that.
Yeah, I was always, I guess for me, I was sort of, not lucky is probably the wrong word. I was sort of an accidental hero to some degree by being an athlete, because my father was very much against me ever being an athlete. He didn't have a great education. He worked so hard I have an older brother, a younger brother, for the boys, and was driven to us to be educated and have a job. So when I said I want to be a professional athlete, it was, you're kidding me, aren't you? It's not happening. And especially when I said, I'm really good at this triathlon thing. And he's like, what's that? Like, it was like, I think I've said it before. It was like being a young kid coming out there, I want to be a professional Spartan athlete. That exists. It was sort of, I said, no,
it's like the equivalent of wanting to be a professional FIFA player, isn't it, these days, or an esports player or something. It wasn't even a career at the time.
It wasn't a career. And then I fell into it. And I think my whole career, my dad's always called me, he passed away 2 years ago, but he was always like, you're the blessed son. I don't know. You got paid to do, I don't understand why they paid you to do that. He could never grasp it. He was old, a lot older than he had me when he was 44. So he was a relatively older father per se. Yeah. And so he was from a different era. But I think he always reminded me that I'm very, very blessed to do what I do. And I think that my natural competitiveness always came out in my racing, and I was always called cocky, and I don't think I ever was. I was just, I guess, to some degree, desperate to do the best I could in the period of time I had. And I took it very, very serious. And I had to win, because winning was the currency that paid the bills. So it was never a joke to me. Right? And I had a good time, don't get me wrong, but it was, and I think, I was always preparing for the afterlife. My father made me.
Right. Well, that's really interesting. So were you consciously looking ahead when you were an athlete? Because I was going to say, how was it for you deciding to finish? Did you always have one eye on what you were going to do next?
100% I did. And I say to the athletes now, I was always putting myself, literally, I think I won my first world title at 22 as an ITU athlete. And that first piece of money, my father made me finish. I did my financial degree, commerce degree at university. I did my master's in accounting. So I was definitely educated, and I worked at Bankers Trust as a banker. And then I quit that to become a triathlete. I figured there's no money in banking.
Why wouldn't you go and ride your bike?
And so it was very much, my brother is a successful lawyer, and my younger brother's a successful computer engineer. So we always were a very strong family unit, and so I was always very alert on the fund money I had. I was always investing it, and always investing. I opened bike shops that I sold, and even during my career, I was very alert that that I was very lucky to be doing what I do, and that at any moment this could be taken away with me by an injury, or so that, you had to be aware that I was sort of living in fairy tale land. And I get the impression a lot of the times now with a lot of the young athletes, and I try and tell that to them, it goes very, very quick, guys, and you need to be prepared for the afterlife. It's very, very difficult. And so, by the time I had no idea I'd be 38, 39 when I retired, and I won that Kona at 38. And I was the oldest winner at the time, and Crowe went and won the next year. And then I was able to secure 4 years of sponsors, which I was my own agent with my good friend. And that gave me some breathing room to really work on the other businesses I had. And I was doing a lot of consulting for high performance programs within China and Kazakhstan. At that point, I thought my life was going to roll, sort of play in that space. And then it was when I set up and started I built the high performance training center in Thailand and the international school I realized I had a knack for finding money, raising money, finding projects to raise that money for those projects, and then running the logistics and delivering that. So basically mergers and acquisitions. A lot of the stuff I learned at university, I was able to apply. And I realized during sport that I had the network now to reach out to sport gave me that network that I probably wouldn't have had. I would have had to be in behind a big company to do that. So that's how I was able to form my own company and go from there. But it was definitely something that was always very front and center of my mind as an athlete. And I don't think anyone truly appreciated that. He's so intense, Macca, or because I felt that intensity, because I had an old man behind me going, I can't believe you're 38 now, son. You need to walk. What are you going to do next? It was always reminded at Christmas, and it was constant.
Yeah, man. And is that where the crossover came in when SuperLeague happened? I've got the impression, and I might not be correct on this, but that you were a very fundamental part of like bringing triathlon together with business in a way that it wasn't all about governing bodies and the WTCS or ITU as it was then. All of a sudden it was, remember when I visited you guys out at SuperLeague in Malta, from the athlete's point of view, it felt like a summer camp where they were They were doing some racing and having a really good time. But there was this business aspect to it where all of a sudden you guys had arrived with the contract from the TV crew, the professional aspect. It was almost like a Formula One event, but instead of having cars going around, you had the kids racing around there. It was an amazing, very, very different spectacle that made the racing the heart of a day, but it wasn't just about the racing somehow.
Yeah, I think, look, I remember being an athlete, and I still hear it now with the announcement of Kona and the movement now. You always hear athletes complain about everything. And I was always, in my household, I was always brought up, you complain for a moment, but what is the solution? Like, what are you, it's easy to sit there and whinge and sit back and go, well, what are you doing about that? You know? So when I retired, it was like, okay, what are the pain points that I've faced in my career? And one of the biggest ones was being left off the Sydney Olympic team. I was world number one, I was a world champion, and I was left off, probably rightfully so. They were probably right, but it should have been left to me to decide that, because my mother had passed away and they didn't think I was mentally right to do it. And but I didn't want any pollution. You know, when you're a junior athlete, you just think the best go. You don't realize that there's all this gray area in the middle, and favoritisms and coaches that you don't talk to, and all this system that cloudies and pollutes this beauty that is sport. So I just thought with Super League, I wanted to create a product where I don't care if you're black, blue, yellow, orange, purple, whatever color you are, whatever you believe, you want to do the best racing in the world, here's how you get in, tick the box and you're in, right? Like, you win this race, you go. And that was sort of fundamentally where I came up with the Super League concept. And then I was looking at, why aren't we getting the cut through in triathlon? Everyone's always talked about the demographic, and it's the same as sailing, and it's amazing. And you know, we all talk about it. Again, what's anyone ever doing about it? I realize Ironman's not going to do anything about it, because their business model is mass participation, and that's fine. They just need to create more events. So to think that they're going to come up with a solution is, you're either an idiot or you're just simple, right? So you can yell and scream at Ironman and say, yeah, they probably do have a responsibility.
The pro race Ironman is the cherry next to the pie for them, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's great, but it's the thing that they use to promote getting more age groupers into the events.
Exactly. And you know, I just figured, well, instead of whinging about it, let me do something about it. So, you know, when I had the opportunity to raise some capital to deliver an event, I put together the program, delivered, you know, what I thought would work well on television. I had the opportunity, a good friend of mine that I went to university with was leading Fox Sports in Asia, Simeon Dawes. And I went and sat with Simeon and asked him, why isn't triathlon on TV? What do I need to do to get triathlon on TV? He's like, it's boring. It's not best versus best anymore. We've moved out of it. There's so many events now that people avoid each other. You need best versus best performance, and you need a fixed calendar. So the World Triathlon Series was definitely on the right path with what they were trying to deliver, but the commercial rights that they own and they took from the athletes restricted your ability to be a professional. So it was always going to be an Olympic amateur style racing experience. So I thought, well, let's look at what others are doing and let's try and create a product that works, and then move into a team dynamic and try and create commercial value around that. And it was simple. And he said to me, you need a product that lasts 52 minutes on television. Right? You give me that, I'll slot it into your primetime TV. But if you don't, it doesn't. You can't give me a 2-hour product, because I can't give you that. You're not football. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, 52 minutes, bang. Like I molded the product. And of course, you got to stay true to the sport, but it sort of went that way. And that's sort of how we deliver it. And then I tried to bring the corporates around and create an up close and personal experience. I'm always fascinated by Alpe d'Huez and the Tour de France and the crowds being very, very close to the athletes. I think that immersive feeling for a spectator adds value to a sport. Personally, whether I'm right or wrong, and I don't know, but I really think that's valuable. So that's what I tried to make these circuits that were tighter and bringing crowds together and doing that. I had no idea that the delivery of Super League would create. I just thought I was doing great for the sport that I loved, but then suddenly you realize you're coming in and you're encroaching on a pie that a lot of people have been eating for a long period of time, and they start getting a little bit frustrated about your existence, and then you start coming up in the same way as an athlete with all the backhanded deals and things that are the dirtiness of sport that you're like, wow, I had no idea. And a lot of people trying to push you. You know, I just sort of come in and be like, oh, great, Macca, let's work together. No one wants to work together. No one wants to do any of that. And kill it off. Yeah. And it's
Well,
a constant.
I'll tell you why I think you've got it right. I had a bunch of athletes that I coach, and we were all going down to do this big race in the UK, a big half distance race. And it was on the same weekend as Super League London. And a couple of weeks before the race, a bunch of my athletes said, I've got some corporate tickets for Super League London. Let's go down and watch. And I was like, hey guys, we're all racing. And then like, well, I've raced a few times this year already. Let's get together. And so I had half of my team there racing and half the team in London watching Super League. And it made me go, like at first, I'll be honest, I was a bit like, what's going on? You guys should be racing, But
Yes.
then I took a step back and went, they've got seats in the corporate box. It's their chance they've all got photos with GTB and with Alex Yee, and here's me with Hayden Wild. It is not a once in a lifetime chance, but it kind of is, from that point of view, to be up so close with these athletes who they've seen at the Olympics, at the Commonwealths. And it made me think it has made a product. So you guys have made a product that takes, there are athletes who are no more keen than my guys for racing, but they wanted to come and watch the pros race more than they wanted to watch. And I thought, wow, that's hats off, man. That is an amazing product that's doing the job you wanted to do. And it's raised the profile of the sport to the point where there's no way people would have gone to watch the London Triathlon 5 years ago over racing themselves. Amazing.
No, it's a great product, and well, it's not me, the athletes are the product, right? I think you just need to give a platform, and I don't think we've ever, Kona's always been that for long course athletes, and I think back in the day, when it was a singular world championship, a one-off world championship, they moved to the series, which I understand now, but I think ITU had a fantastic product with that one-off world title. The grand final doesn't seem to have that same, because a lot of the time it's non-consequential. This year it worked with Leo Bergier winning that world title, but in the years past, the world title's been wrapped up 2 rounds before that. So I was like, I think you need.
There's always that element, isn't there, of someone can win the race but not win the grand final, and
you
get that kind of tactical. Well, if I finish fourth,
yeah. But I think, look, I think my personal opinion is my gut feeling was that I loved my ITU racing or World Triathlon racing days, and then it was a very different era when I migrated, when they left me off the Olympic team, and I decided in 2002 after Commonwealth Games to do Ironman. There was no 70.3 back then, right? So you made the big jump. It was from 2 hours of racing to 8 hours of racing, from draft legal to 180K time trial. So it was a huge jump, and it was probably this. Ironman was where you were a professional to some degree. The ITU was a little bit invisible. That World Championship was valuable, but the World Cup series racing wasn't really. I won a whole bunch of World Cups. No one even talks about them, right? But it was that World Championship every year that mattered. Simon Lessing would win, Spencer Smith would win, and then when it became that series, it sort of softened. And I wanted to make sure I could bring these young kids, because I felt that Ironman, the people coming to Ironman were old. It was sort of a midlife crisis sport, with the utmost respect. So the demographic was great, but what were we doing to feed the next generation of kids to come through? And you're seeing a lot of them. Like there's, Johnny Brownlee has no interest in doing an Ironman. There's a lot of athletes. Simon Whitfield, Olympic champion, never did an Ironman, no interest. Right. And when I was coming through, there was the sport was sort of whole and one. Ironman as a brand wasn't so powerful. And I thought, who's focusing on the youth and the juniors and building that? Sure, the federations are, but I found that very
well, that brings us around to talking about, doesn't it, to the young guys at the moment. We got to talk about Gustav and Christian to start, because they, to some extent, I know they'd already had their 1, 2, 3 in one of in Bermuda. The first time I really came across those guys was out in Malta at Super League, and you've got, all of a sudden they were I don't want to say they were the young upstarts, because they'd already been on the podium at WTCS, but they were racing against the likes of Vincent, and they were openly talking about wanting to try and take him down. It was like it was their chance to kind of go up against the big names, kind of thing, and they were open. We are not afraid of anybody. We're going to race as hard as we can, and people say it doesn't suit us, but we'll see. You've got these guys now racing at the highest level in Super League, over a 300-meter swim, through sub-7, sub-8, through to winning 70.3 and Ironman championships. And it's like the sport's come full circle to the days of Mark Allen, where you can win the Olympic distance and you can win Kona in the same year, which I honestly thought we would never see again.
Well, yeah, two things. We brought Christian into Hamilton, our first ever Super League race. We brought Christian to Hamilton Island.
Did you have him back then?
Yeah, first race. If you watch, he won the Eliminator. Yeah. He was winning the Eliminator. Great kid. Like, it's a huge. And we brought Hayden Wild. I got laughed at when I brought Hayden Wild. I saw Hayden Wild do a race in Hamburg. He was out sprinting. It was 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th sprinting for that position. And he turned himself inside out to come 7th. You can't teach that. That's in you. That's an instinct. I said, I want that kid in Super League. He's the future, this kid. And
really?
And it was the same when we signed Christian for sub 7. Everyone's like, what about Jan Frodeno? I'm like, mate, you're not paying attention, right? You've got an engine. And what the Norwegians have that no one talks about, and this is what I'm saying about federations and their small-minded thinking, right? I understand they're government-backed and they have to do things a certain way, and it never used to be that way until the Olympics came along and government. But they are the first federation that backs their athletes. So Christian Blumenfeld travels with his federation. The federation coaches him. The federation pays for him. They travel as a group, and they are doing Ironman. No other federation is coaching. There's no one coaching, there was no one coaching Tim Don from the UK Federation, getting UK support to do Ironman. He had to leave, go solo, and do it on his own. So the success they're having is that they carry their high performance program all the way through Ironman racing. That's why they can shift between distances. If I opt now to leave ITU or my federation and do an Ironman, I can't get back in. I'm locked out, right? So this is the problem you have. We're back when I was racing in the early days, you could shift back and forth. So the talent is there. Jan Frodeno and these athletes could have gone back and forwards, but they made a conscious decision to leave the federation, which means you're out. So you have to do Ironman, and that's the one-way pass. So no one talks about that perspective of what Norway has done very, very effective in that sense. And they are remarkable athletes. Their attitude is incredible, and they've been tracking them from a science perspective since they were 12, 13 years of age. Their blood work, everything. They're cyborgs, and they are going to be very, very difficult to unhinge. The change to, and I think they're capable of going back and forwards. They will. I do believe at some point there is a point of no return. You can't go from Ironman back to this shorter distance racing. Youth sort of forgives the mistakes that age will punish you for, and they are aging. They're naturally going to age, and you get away with things when you're young. You don't get injured. You wake up and there's so much testosterone running through you. You feel incredible, but as you start to age, the bones start to ache a bit, and you feel that session a little bit more, and the refinement of your craft becomes a lot more important. But they have an engine behind them, a high performance engine backed by a federation, backed by a government, which is just a massive advantage that they absolutely have, that the guys they're coming up against don't. And they are going to be very, very difficult to dislodge. And if they say they're going to do something, as I said, when I signed Christian Blumenfeld for sub 7, he'd never done an Ironman. He'd only won the Bahrain 70.3 twice, never won an Ironman, never anything. And everyone laughed. He hadn't won the Olympics. Right? And then he went, Cozumel, world record, boom, Olympics, boom. Now he's the Ironman world champion, 70.3 world champion. Everyone's like, mate, Christian's the land. I'm like, well, hang on a sec. 3 years ago, you told me he was nobody. And this is the problem, I guess. It's not the problem, but I think fans of triathlon, we have very, very short memories. And a lot of the time we don't dive deeper than the results. We don't look at races a lot of the time. When you watch how athletes are racing in 6th or 7th place, you go, oh, so-and-so won, right? I'm like, yeah, well, did you see what happened 7th or 8th place? Or, who's coming and why they're coming, what type of race they had. Like, they might have been on the front all day and 4 guys passed them at the end. And had you watched Bloomy and Gustav and Casper Stores, you would have seen these weapons are coming, and they're going to come in a big way, and they're going to lift the game again. And that's exactly what they've done.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, we're talking about young guys who are coming through. Let's talk about Sam. Let's talk about Sam at Kona. Because I honestly think anyone who says that they saw that coming, other than Sam and his dad, I mean, Sam was he was on our radar because he came and he won. We had him on the podcast. He won a local Ironman in the UK when I think he was 19 still, and he ran like a 2:41. And everyone said, the course must have been 3 miles short. And this is in his first Ironman at 19 years old. And a mate of mine who raced, he was like, well, it was a bit short, but it was half a mile short, Rob. It wasn't 3 miles short. This kid he's like, I've got his phone number, call him, get him on the show now. So like we've got him on a recording from 3 years ago or something, from just after he's done his first race. But never in a million years did anyone think that he was going to, on debut, do what he did out in Kona.
Oh, I didn't see that coming at all. I think I've been following Sam because he's got such a big swim and his bike strength was good, but I guess he really, that whole Sam Long, Lionel Sanders thing that was sort of when I saw it. Yeah. And I remember really paying attention because I did think he was on the receiving end of that. I didn't think what he said was very. Yeah. I thought
he got set up for it, didn't he?
Someone
in the studio was prodding him and going, "Go on, say that." He's like, "Really?" Do I say, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, I've been that guy. I've been that idiot too.
Yeah.
So I really felt for him, and I really enjoyed what he was what he did. I didn't see 4:04 in Kona, like having seen that performance of Jan Frodeno in 2019. I thought that was the gold standard. We wouldn't see that topple for a long time, and then. Mate, that performance was remarkable. And I just spent the week with him here in South Africa. He came over with the Breitling Tour. He's a breath of fresh air, to be quite honest with you. I like his respect for the history. I like the youthfulness he brings to the racing. I like that he believes he can win. And it's his not his destiny, but it's been something he has been driven to do as a kid. And you cannot underestimate the power of a dream, like the power of want. And we saw that in Kona on debut. He split those Norwegians, and he's not a cyborg, and they have got everything thrown at him. He's got his dad. So you have to give credit where credit's due. And, what we're going to see from Sam now is expectation, right? It's a very, very different beast you're going to have to deal with. And I was only talking to him recently about that. But he's got great people around him. Jan Frodeno is very close with him, and we're chatting on that trip. And he's like, look, now people are going to expect things from you, Sam. Don't change your dynamic. Don't change who you are. Don't feel that weight because it's not real, right? Expectation, your own expectation is heavier than all of theirs. So try and shut that out. But I do believe great athlete, huge talent, and very, very, very. I think that the move to Nice of this World Championships, we're probably going to talk about that. I'm not too sure how that's going to affect him. I don't know his claim because it's a completely different athlete that will be successful on this type of course. But he's definitely exciting, and I do enjoy what he brings to the sport, what he represents, and his entire story. It's remarkable. Exactly the story you said, like a 19-year-old kid doing an Ironman. Most high-performance coaches would be like, too young, you shouldn't be doing this. All the reasons why you shouldn't. Don't underestimate the power of a dream. Do not underestimate it. And that's what we saw in Kona.
Were you part of the behind-the-scenes getting him in with the Breitling squad? Was that part of your...
No. I've been there. I think he works with Ronnie Shiltnick, who's it's his agent, and so Ronnie's part of the Breitling squad with us, and a great agent, great guy, and I think Sam really fits the Breitling narrative. He's a bit, he's very. If you look at the Breitling athletes, we're independent athletes per se. Daniela is she's Daniela Jan, and myself, and he's that. He's not a loner, but I don't have. Where a Christian is very much the team, and there's other people with all groups, and they train with squads, and Breitling is very much be you, and he fits that. I think it was a perfect fit.
Would you? I don't know how much you're still involved with the Bahrain Victoria squad. Would you? Is he the kind of athlete you'd consider for that kind of setup? Do you think he'd benefit from being in with a gang like that?
We still run it. We're going through our team selection at the moment, and I guess. He's definitely one on the list. I spent a lot of time talking to him about that. He's very eager to explore it. If Ronnie's listening, go easy on me, Ronnie. But he's a realist. Like I like him a lot, to be honest. I think he realizes, it's a team dynamic, Bahrain Victorious, without question, and there is a great camaraderie between the members on the team, and leaning off and benefiting from each other's success through bonuses and stuff, and being able to train together where needed. They're very independent, but they train together, and I think that's where Jan has become a Jan Frodeno is at the end of his career. I hate saying that because he's so good, but he's definitely at the end, and and a lot of people want to do it his way. And he's very, very open. And I really respect that about Jan. He's not very closed off. A lot of athletes, as they age, start to become very sinister and oh, I don't want to share anything. Just think I don't want to give anything away because I'm about to lose anyway. So where he's been much more open, and especially when he's still racing. So yes, to answer your question, Sam is definitely on our radar, and I'd love to have him as part of the team as we restructure that team as well. And we're off to Bahrain in less than 3 days and up there for the Ironman. And that's when we present a lot of the athletes to the Royal Office of we have to do a big presentation of why, who, what they represent, their scheduling, and what the next couple of years would look like. And yeah, Sam's on that short list of potential athletes to be on the team.
When you go through in your head the journey you've been on from, I read your book and I remember you saying when you first quit your banking job, you used to pretend to be going to the office still, and then you'd go and train and then come home in your suit so your dad didn't know you'd quit the job yet.
Yeah.
To go from that transition of, trying to make it in a sport that at the time had no career path to presenting a team of athletes to the Bahraini royal family, do you ever step back and have a moment of, how did I get here from there?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because my good friend MG, who's been with me, he was one of the first guys I met as a young athlete, as an 18-year-old. He started the Noosa Triathlon in Australia, and he was I thought he was the most vain human being I'd ever met. I talk about him in the book, and he always had his shirt off, and he was the quintessential 80s triathlete with the fluorescent pink Speedos and the big glasses on the shirt off and running. And I used to think, you're not even a good runner, but I love this guy. He's like a big brother to me. And he said the same thing to me a couple of weeks ago. He said, the problem sometimes with you, Macca, is you're turning 50 next year and you've never, ever, ever look backwards. You go, wow. And even when you were winning world championship, win Kona, then after the race, you'd be like, okay, for next year. Well, and he used to say, just absorb it. Just please enjoy it. And I to some degree, I think I am hyperactive, or maybe ADD. I've never been diagnosed, and I think maybe that's why my father put me into sport to burn off this natural energy. But I know my brain is always turning, and I'm not one for accolades. Like I love winning, and don't get me wrong, but if you came to my house, I have no trophies up. My wife threw most of them out because she thought they were ugly, and I don't need validation. I'm not a big social media guy. I do post and stuff because I have to, but maybe once a month. And I just like doing things. I like being part of something that I believe in, and triathlon has been so good to me. I'm such a believer in the sport, and I love everything about it. I love the people in it. I love the rawness of it and the honesty of it. And if I can bring any change and leave it in a better place when I'm gone than for the people on, I just think it's cool. So I don't find it work. But yeah, I've been in some situations in the last 4 or 5 years where I'm like, wow, I've sat with the kings of countries, and I'm thinking, I'm just a kid from Cronulla, and I go back and tell my brothers, and they're like, wow. I don't realize the stories until you tell them, it's, I think sport gives you that. You don't see barriers really. You just get on with business and get on with it. But I enjoy it a lot. But yeah, it's funny you said that.
You think it's taught you to treat everybody in front of you as if they're just another person, essentially?
Yeah, well, we all are, right? We all are. And maybe that's the Australianness of us. I don't really have that. It's very easygoing, and without questions, I understand that Sheikh Nasser is a royal, and I understand the protocol, and I'm very, very respectful of that. But I remember only about 5 or 6 years ago. It's funny, I was living in Thailand, and the Queen, the future Queen of Thailand, or the sister of the king, sorry, was doing a triathlon, her first triathlon, and I mean the entire country stopped at this triathlon I was at. And all my team from Tanyapura came out, and Kay, who was my PR girl at Tanyapura, was like dressed to the nines, and we did the race. The princess did the race on her own, and all the military was out there. And I crossed the line. She finished in front of us. So I crossed the line just behind her, and she was in the transition. And I walked over, and all this military. I said, "Congratulations, great race! Like, I'm Chris. I was behind you, princess." And she was English educated, right? It's just, and we just had a conversation. I mean, half of Thailand fainted because I didn't follow the protocol, but she was quite fine with it. And I think, we had a good 20-minute conversation and talking about the event, because they are normal people, right? They are, and when I think they understand when they enter the sports realm per se, you shed a little bit. Sheikh Nasser's done Ironmans. He's running. He's in the group with everyone. He's suffering with everyone else. They're all around him. You don't have the military. I don't think the English royalty can do that. But I know I've always felt that sport is this equalizer where everyone sees themselves as equal, and because of that, it's enabled you to take steps that you probably wouldn't have in a different environment. If I was at a black tie dinner and I saw Sheikh Nasser, I would never walk up, "Hello, Sheikh, how are you?" I just wouldn't. Yeah. I understand my place, and I think that opportunity through sport has enabled me to get into doors and create relationships that I've been able to foster and bring good, I hope, to the sport.
Awesome. Well, listen, we touched a minute ago on the idea of how will Sam do in Nice, and this is still unconfirmed at the moment, but what's definitely been announced is they're moving the men's race next year from Kona to, as we record, an unconfirmed location on an unconfirmed date. It's very heavily rumored to be Nice on the 9th of September. Can you see anybody beating Gustav in Nice after his performance at the 70.3 champs in Nice a couple of years ago?
Look, it's 5 weeks. They're on Olympic. The first thing I looked at, because my phone blew up. Boom, 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 boom. What do you think of the change? What do you think of the change? So what change? And then suddenly, bang! I'm reading. I go, wow. So,
did you have any inkling it was coming? Had you heard any?
No idea. I had no idea. No.
It seems to have taken everybody by.
Yeah.
It's come from nowhere, right?
Yeah. A few years ago, I mentioned it would be and it's probably not the most populous thing, but I would have loved this system when.
Right. You were always saying this, weren't you? Let's rotate it around so that the guys who get hammered by the heat and humidity have a chance every other year.
Yeah, I hated Kona. So I lost. I only won it twice, and if I had this opportunity, I probably would have 5 or 6 of them, because I never used to lose Ironmans except Kona. But Kona is a special beast, which I think, and remember, Ironman started in Hawaii, and you need that attachment needs to stay there. So I like the concept of rotating. I'm not overly sold on splitting men and women. I just think that's a funny thing to do. I just think, that's a funny thing. I don't know why, but they have their reasons. I'm not against the rotation by any means. Now the September date was the one that blew me away, because you've got, especially when I was looking at the Norwegians, I'm thinking, okay, you move the date forward a month. The Norwegians are chasing Olympic points. The World Triathlon Series will finish 4 weeks prior to that. So where they thought they had a longer window to prep for an October 9 Kona, that's now 4-week preparation window, right? And will that change what their racing is? They've probably been hit by surprise, or maybe they haven't. I have no idea. I haven't asked them. I'll see Christian next week. But no, it's going to bring a completely different athlete into play. Rudy von Borgs, who grew up in this part of the world, Descenders. It's a legitimate Ironman course. Anyone who has done this, it is a legitimate course. That Col d'Avance is a proper climb, and that back valley is very, very hot.
And the descent off the top of it as well.
The descents are very tricky. Yeah.
The descent is a legit alpine. It's I don't know whether it's 40 minutes, 45 minutes of. When the year I did it, some guy hit the barriers and went over the top. Coming down, it's a proper alpine descent, and it's going to play just like we saw when it was in Nice for the 70.3 Worlds. A different kind of athlete with different skills can make up a lot of time there.
I'm with you. I think Gustav Eden's going to be very hard to beat. But my first thought was Ali. I texted Ali Brownlee and went, "Listen here, Al. If there has ever been an opportunity right now that you come off your injury, you nurse your body, this is a course for you." He's that type of rider. He's got impeccable bike skills. Growing up in Leeds, you've seen the way Ali rides a bike. He's migrating up in distance. I think that whole push back to the Olympics has hurt him, right? That whole has busted his body up a bit. He's had a bunch of injury issues. If he can stay injury free, I think he would have been going, wow, this is a magnificent opportunity, because he's a fantastic climber. Like a fantastic climber. He has a huge engine, and I think this event suits him more than a Kona event. And I think if he was to get a world title here, it brings completely different athletes into play, is what I'm saying. And guys like Jan Frodeno, they've got to adjust their training. He's a little bit older. the descent. He can't use that sustained power and those power meters as effectively as he can in Kona, where he holds that high wattage for a longer period of time and is able to slowly establish that break. Those breaks can be pulled back a lot easier on the descents and the climbs, and it's more of a revving race as opposed to this constant power race. You got to look at those different athletes, right? And maybe a Patrick Lange or these 2:30 run in Israel who can climb, and a lot of people aren't taking into consideration 2 laps of that run on the Avenue de Anglais out there. What's the Champs-Élysées? Well, not the Champs, the front section there out to the airport and back. It's dead flat, it's exposed and hot. And we talked about it over 21K, and the marathon there is hot.
If they go with that same course, 4 laps of that course is a brutal war of attrition for sure. Mainly because it's not very interesting, right? You've got a very similar situation to the back stretch up on Kona, where there's nothing to see. In fact, you can see something. You can see the turnaround on the horizon every time you get to the turnaround. And man, it looks a long way, even though it's 3 miles. Yeah,
without question. And I think, look, I think it's great for the sport. I know that's probably not a very populist thing to say. I understand why they're doing it. They do have to make money, and we need Ironman to survive in order to provide the events. A lot of people are very, very quick to jump on them. I have been that in the past, but you want it to survive, and you don't make decisions like that lightly. There's probably a lot of pushback over the double day this year in Kona. It was a disaster. Like, the racing looked great on the thing, but the community fell apart. There was no food on the shelves. Like, they're like, get out, don't do that again. And so, look, sometimes you're hamstrung and you have to do what you have to do. But I think Nice, if it is in Nice, and if that's not confirmed, Nice has its own history. It's been there forever. It's Europe's first big race. So that is important. And I'm a big historian. I love that dynamic, and I hope they tie into that. And we use some of that old history of, with Mark Allen winning there and all that French history of that event.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a really, really interesting event. And for me, Gustav Iden is the man to beat. Depending on that Olympic, I think he should turn his back on the Olympics. Personally, I know he won't.
I agree.
If he is unstoppable at this distance, and we thought of that of Jan Frodeno, and look how quick that happens, and Gustav could go bang, 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 bang before we knew it, and he could have 6 of them. We could be looking at a new Mark Allen very quickly. He's still very, very young, and he is very, very good. Very good. And I think this course, he must be going, you beauty. It's going to be great. It'll be tough to beat.
Well, one last thing then before we wrap this up, we have to talk about Patrick Lange's run in Israel this last weekend as we're recording. 2 hours 30 and 15 seconds, I think. Yeah. So 2 questions here. How much of a play did the shoes play in it, if at all? And how good is that run? Did you ever believe you'd see someone running a 2:30 in a legit Ironman like that?
Well, did I ever think I'd see someone run 2:30? No. I thought it would come, not as quickly since I retired, but then I thought, I've retired for 10 years. So it's happening. But I just, to understand how quick that is remarkable. Especially, it wasn't a shit bike, right? You're not looking at a slow bike.
He wasn't hanging around.
Yeah, he's not riding 5.5 hours and going bang, he's riding a big bike. So it's a legitimate race. Do the shoes have effect? Absolutely. I having done the sub 7 event and having gone through that, a lot of the back, when we filmed a lot of that and we were able to get into in with ASICs and look at it, we went into Puma and looked at the shoe development and what they were building, and you're speaking to those shoe designers. It's 100%, especially in what they're telling me and you're seeing now. And they were saying that these shoes benefit. They were originally built for the marathon, for Kipchoge, the Nike guys with the cushioning. So he said it's the way they're shaped and the way the new carbon plates are coming into them is for assisting in that DOMS, that leg fatigue that limit the marathon. He said the first 30 kilometers of marathon, there's no fatigue, right? You're running like you've done it's that back 10K that you lose your time, right? And we saw that in Kipchoge's chart. He said it's amplified in an Ironman. Because you're heavier, you're more flat-footed, so it brings that back end of the marathon where you used to fall apart. And I remember, back when we were racing, Cam Brown and I laughed about it. We were looking for the lightest shoes with the least amount of foam. Now they're getting massive foam and looking for that spring. Like it's you would have had a trade-off with weight, but now that weight's been eliminated, it's a huge benefit. You still have to run, but you're not getting the leg soreness as quickly. You're really supporting the stride where it starts to fall apart after 25k to 42k. You're keeping that stride length intact, and it adds a lot of play into the game. And people go, oh, you're still going to put one foot in front of the other. Absolutely right, but you're fit enough to do that. The engine, you've been in an Ironman, the engine's there. You just can't run any quicker.
Yeah,
your legs are sore, and you're like, oh, but now there's an assistance. And I know World Triathlon's just banned them. Ironman hasn't made a decision on that. Triathletes we've always led it in technology, right? We brought aero bars, we changed cycling. We've always got a hard time. Triathlon geeks, triathletes are weirdos, but we constantly bring innovation and change because we're prepared to take those chances at major events. And I think it's cool. I think it does a great job, and I think keep them in. I'd love to see.
And it's great to see, isn't it? It's great to see these times. It's a really legit, like, it went to 2:36 and then 2:34, and now it's 2:30. I'd love personally, from a fan's point of view, to see someone go under that 2:30 barrier in a legit race. That'd be
without
be amazing.
So, I loved it, and I think because growing up as a runner, and I used to always get not attacked by my running friends. They were, triathlon, you guys are not. You're the jack of all trades, master of none. And when I made the move and I wear glasses, no one runs in glasses. And then it was like, your 10k run splits on those, just they're not properly measured because we started breaking 30, and then I remember Ali Brownlee went and did that 10k track race and ran like 28:20, and I remember texting all my running mates going, let me guess, the track's short, right? What's your excuse this time? I told you they're legit. I told you these guys are good, and I said, and the best part about this Ali Brownlee is he's a swimmer, mate. He can swim with, like I said, start giving respect where respect's due. And I think, Patrick Lange is, you're running 2:30. Yeah, the shoes help, but you're running 2:30. You are an engine and you're a machine. And it's cool that he's doing that. And I love seeing these fast times. I remember breaking 8 hours. It's almost embarrassing when people ask me what my best time is now. 7:51. You're like, it's like, you're shit. They just drop that every week. Joe Skipper just went, boom, 7:45 for like the fourth time this year or something. You're like, dude, it used to be the gold standard. Now it's like, you're just watching yourself drop out of the list of.
Yeah, you're not even in the top 10 if you're not breaking 7:50 in some of these races.
It's remarkable.
Heartbreak. You did it first, mate. Kilometers were longer back then.
Yeah, cheers.
Oh, listen, thank you very much for joining us, mate. I know you're a busy man. Well, how would you like to wrap this up? Tell us about the Pho3nix Foundation again and where people can find out more about it, because it sounds like you guys are doing amazing work out there.
No, follow us all online. It's Pho3nix Life on Instagram, with a 3 instead of the E in Pho3nix. Pho3nix Foundation is a Swiss-based foundation. A few years old, we're doing a bunch in triathlon, supporting a whole bunch of the next generation, but doing a lot with kids. So just follow it. And if you want to donate, you can, but I'm not asking for anything. It's more just follow along, because I really, we're open to, if you've got any programs in your area. We already amplify a lot of the work the Brownlee Foundation's doing. We're doing a lot with Nicola Spirig and Javier Gomez, and we're trying to really assist those foundations. So if you're one of those foundations that are doing work with getting kids active and moving and doing, and that can be anything. It doesn't need to be triathlon. We're doing stuff here in running. So if you're one of those foundations, reach out, because they're the programs we're trying to implement. And we've got some really cool donors and a really amazing guy in Sebastian that's keen to bring that change. And I love this not-for-profit side of the world, because you're not driven by numbers and corporate greed. It's just all about doing good, and that makes the heart feel good at times. Yeah.
Awesome. Chris McCormack, thank you very much for joining us, buddy. And hopefully we'll be able to catch up again in the future. Take good care of yourself.
Cheers. You too.